And the really interesting thing is that often when you write your story down and you write it in full, it's not until you do that that you realize just how much you have overcome in life. And that's what I found really fascinating through my programs and my work, is that often the women I work with will finish their story and they'll look at it and go, wow, I didn't even realize that I had come out the other side of so many things. Because in our day-to-day life, we just get caught up in living, and, you know, especially for those who are going through really severe adversities, they get so used to just surviving that even when they have overcome and developed great resilience and they're on their way to thriving, sometimes they still don't see that, or they don't, I guess, really give themselves kudos for how far they've come. So memoir writing as a tool for healing and resilience is really quite fascinating. And as I said, it's through that process of writing your story and identifying, you know, what some of the key things are that you've been through in your life and what helped you come out the other side, that a lot of the women I've worked with have found that as a fantastic tool for building resilience. When it comes to resilience, you know, I believe that it's something that we develop. And for those who have a background of violence or, you know, exploitation, and they don't have a nurturing environment, it's so important for them to be, you know, we need to be able to catch those people and those individuals in society who don't have those nurturing, supportive spaces around them. So if they don't have a nurturing family, if they don't have you know, those people around them in school, you know, that's why it's so important that we have organizations and community organizations especially that can be a safety net or a catch net for people in society. I see a lot of people through the advocacy work that I do who unfortunately haven't had a nurturing background, and it can be really tough for them to learn, you know, how to create boundaries, which is a big one in order to be able to thrive. I'm going to say it's virtually impossible to truly thrive in life if you don't know how to create boundaries, if you don't know how to express what you want and what you're comfortable with. Then it's very hard to ever get to a place where you can truly thrive, because very, very often, and I know this as a survivor of, you know, sexual violence myself, you tend to make some of the same decisions over and over. You continue the same patterns. So
actually, I'm going to back it up with a question of yours. Through your work as an author, book coach, and speaker, you've worked with dozens of trauma survivors to help them rewrite their life stories into powerful memoirs. Can you share with us the surprising connection between writing and resilience, which bounces back into what you just said about those that don't have that as a background?
Yeah, so it kind of comes back to what I think I mentioned earlier, which is that when you write your entire story out, you get to see on paper just how far you've come. And, you know, it's very hard to see that journey if you haven't kind of spelled it out and see it on literally on paper or on the screen. So that's what I've found, you know, through my writing and book coaching programs, is that the women who do have histories of abuse and exploitation will go through the process and then see that they are far more resilient than they actually realized, because they were just in this pattern of kind of going about life, being the resilient human that they are, not realizing that that is a very important life skill to develop. And then through that as well, I think what Monique was mentioning earlier, it's so important for survivors to be able to focus on the future instead of always looking back. So when you do sort of go back in time a bit with that memoir writing and see the life journey that you've lived, then you're able to focus again on the future and go, okay, I know now where I've been. I can close the book on that and I can focus on the future. And that's the really exciting thing that I've seen happen with a lot of survivors, is that you know, in the beginning when they share their story with me, they say, I've actually never really told anyone this before, and it's really hard. Like, I'm quite scared about talking about this stuff. But at the end of the journey, they're completely different, and they say, oh my gosh, I feel so empowered. I feel like so excited to share this. Yes, I'm still kind of scared and nervous, but I know that this will help others, and I'm like so proud of myself. And that's the really beautiful resolution that you see through the writing process.
Jas, you're a strong believer that trauma does not have a life sentence. Can you share why that is and how your work with one particular survivor named, is it Prema?
Yeah,
Prema
Prema.
helped you to understand this?
Okay. Yeah, I love talking about this question. It's kind of interesting that it can be seen as controversial, which to me, I don't think it should be, but there is this belief, particularly in the mental health space, and it is held by a lot of survivors as well, that what they have been through has to be a life sentence, and that it's something that they will never get over, and they have to carry it with them forever. And there are aspects of that that are true. So I don't want to, speak for anybody else, but I'm a strong believer that we don't have to see trauma as being a life sentence, something that is forever holding us back. I have seen some survivors sadly have that viewpoint, and it keeps them from thriving. It keeps them in that victim mode. I've worked with, dozens of survivors of sexual exploitation, but there's one very beautiful and amazing woman that I always love talking about. Her name's Prema. She was a writing client of mine, and I won't go into graphic detail, but experienced horrendous sexual abuse from basically the time she was born until she was 15. And when you hear something like that, you think, gosh, how did this person survive? How are they still here? And the truth is, she has had a lot of adversities throughout her life, but she's also one of the most deeply, she is someone who lives with such deep gratitude and joy that I have not seen in very many people throughout my life. So she finds joy and gratitude and beauty in everything around her. The smallest of things are, things that she appreciates and looks at and just really appreciates in all of its glory and beauty, whether it's a flower, whether it's the sun coming up in the mornings, droplets of rain on the window. And something that she shared with me is that, she just really focuses on the beauty in the world. And I think that's something that has sustained her throughout her life. There are a lot of people that look at her and go, how are you still alive? How did you find the courage? She's somebody who's shared very openly about her mental health journey, and that obviously hasn't been smooth sailing. She has dealt with suicidality like many, many survivors of exploitation. But I think what has sustained her and has built her resilience is learning to find this deep gratitude and joy and beauty in everything around her. And that's actually something I've heard from a number of survivors. They've said, I actually appreciate things far more deeply than a lot of people around me. There was actually a male survivor that I worked with and to write his story. And he said, oh, it's so interesting. I hang out with other people in my age group, we're in our 60s. And he said, everyone I speak to just seems to speak so poorly of relationships, or they don't really, it's like they almost take their partners for granted. And he just said, I just, I'm still searching for the love of my life, but I can't wait to find her. And I just know that I'm going to appreciate that relationship so much more and never, ever take it for granted, because I know how meaningful it is to be fully seen and fully loved and fully appreciated for who you are. And when I've heard survivors share that, I just think these are such incredible lessons that we can all learn and take into our own lives. And those are just two stories, but those are two that have really hit home for me, that, you know, the things we go through, for some people, they will carry elements of those with them forever. And I know as a survivor that there are still things that impact me today from the things that I've been through. But I live my life in a way where I choose to thrive as best I can and really go for every opportunity and appreciate the small moments, and not let those things that may still be triggers be an excuse not to try in life, or be an excuse to believe that there's nothing better out there for me. I think it's important to empower survivors to know that you can still live with triggers, but you can still live a whole and fulfilling and thriving life. Please don't ever believe that the things that have been done to you or the things that you've experienced mean that you have to miss out in life and that you have to hold yourself back. Just give yourself grace for where you're at. And I really encourage you to be curious about what you can start doing to add more tools into your, mental health toolkit, so that you can start developing that resilience, whether that is, through journaling, whatever it may be. There's lots of different ways to build your resilience. I find that journaling, as I said, is a really good one, because it's very easy for people to do, regardless of whether they consider themselves a creative person or not. You can just spend 5 minutes of an evening just jotting down, I usually say jot down 3 things that you're grateful for, and try not to just focus on the things that are external. So for example, most people go for, I'm grateful for having a roof over my head. And that's an important one. There are so many people out there that don't even have the basics of housing. So it's definitely something to be grateful for. But I'd also encourage you to do a bit of self-reflection on what are some internal factors about you that you can be grateful for. That might be, I'm really grateful for my sensitive and empathetic nature, because it helps me more deeply connect to my friends, helps me to be a soundboard and a listening ear for those around me who, don't have anyone else to talk to. Try and think about external and internal factors, and do some gratitude journaling around that. And then as part of that as well, another really simple exercise you can do is just to write down, what are maybe like 2 or 3 of the biggest challenges that you've faced. Maybe you do it in the last year, or maybe it's your entire life. And then write a little bit about, what helped you come out the other side and where you are now. And that's a really great tool for building resilience too, because just that simple exercise can help you again to just remember like the things that you have actually come through, and that you are actually a lot stronger than you probably give yourself credit for.
I love that, it not being a life sentence.